Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Baker from the support team here at ProSymmetry, and I'll be kind of guiding you through the new functionality in version 8.1 today. So we're going to be covering a wide variety of different functionality that we've added, as well as just some look and feels and improvements and the way that the product looks overall. So very excited to bring this new functionality today. Some of the major areas that we'll be covering today is the what if side of things. So as we'll cover here in just a bit, you'll see that it's been completely revamped and modernized, as well as we've gone through and added a lot of additional functionality to enhance the experience within there. Additionally, we've added some email notifications, so we'll be going through how to work with that, the configuration, and some of the goals with there. Outside of that, we've also updated the bulk project allocation Flatgrid view. Just some quality of life improvements, as well as some additional views that can help you kind of plan and work with your data within Tempus. And then outside of that, we have a lot of additional functionality that within different areas that we'll be covering kind of one by one. With that being said, before we begin, I just want to let everybody know if you have any questions during today's webinar, please do not hesitate to go into the chat and start putting those in there. We have some support representatives that may be able to assist you during the webinar. And then if not, what we will be able to do is take those offline and get back to you after the fact. So with that being said, I would like to kind of kick off today's webinar by going through the new what if scenario planning within Tempus. So from the home page right here, we can see we do have this Tempus model. This may be named something different in your environment, maybe what if or Tempus what if, since this is an alias. But if we go ahead and select within here, you will see kind of a similar view, but a little bit different. So we have completely revamped the look and feel within here. So as you can see, we have this kind of as a list. I believe the tiles will be back at a later point in time as well, but it will look very similar, same layout. However, there will be some additional kind of user interface changes. And for example, if I navigate into one of these models, so if I go to test mode in this case, you will see that things look, the model looks a little bit different. You can see a little bit more condensed, a little bit cleaned up, and just more modernized overall. On top of that, we've added a bunch of additional functionality in places that are more aligned to what we have in the super grid side of things. So today's webinar is not going to be highlighting all the new pieces of function, or all the enhanced UI options within here. We will briefly cover those, but it won't be the main focus. Today will be just the new functionality that has come along with the updates to what if. And so we absolutely would love for you to go in here, and once you upgrade to the new version, play around, see the new look and feel, and give us any feedback that you have. But with that being said, I'm going to start things off by just navigating back one more page and creating a new model, because there will be a new interface, something a little bit similar to the roadmap view that we have in Tempus, but it's still going to be accomplishing the same piece where we're just determining which data we would like for us to model within this scenario. So I'm just going to name this my demo model. Go ahead, provide it a name. We have the same access types as well as date range features that we've seen before. So let's just go ahead and say I want to have this from 2023 and out 3 years. And then down below, we still have the same aggregation where we can select up to 3 levels of aggregation based off of our resource attributes. And to keep things simple, I'm just going to base it off of 1. With my department, I'm just going to select all my departments. So this is where it changes a little bit. We do have some of the same pieces of functionality, such as priority attribute and allocation demand coefficient. However, we have also added financial categories and financial information within the model. So within each one of your projects, you can tie together your financial information if you do set it up. Something a lot of our clients do, and they've been asking us to add it into the model so we can see as we make changes to our models and changing to the start and end dates, how does that impact the potential financial information that we've associated to there? So we now allow you to select your financial categories and bring that into the model in its own specific view. So down below, we have all the financial categories that I have selected within or have created within my environment. And I'm just going to go select them all so we can see that information displayed. Additionally, we've also allowed for you to specify a particular budget associated to your project information to bring into the model as well, so you can compare what that potential budget is versus the financial information associated to your projects. So the budgets are typically managed within the budget management area within which can be found on the homepage of Tempus, and you can associate to one of those budgets that you've created. Right now I have one budget within here, which is my 2024 budget. I'm gonna go ahead and select that. And with those two options selected, then we'll be able to determine and see what that view would look like on the when we actually navigate into the model itself. Outside of that, most of these are the same options that we've seen before. So we still have our proposal logic, the remaining work logic, partial projects, and any that logic that we've seen in many of the other views. And so the last new piece of functionality, at least when it comes to the configuration of the model, is going to be this include project dependencies. A couple versions back, we did introduce the ability to create dependencies for your projects. And so we've had linking before within the what if scenario side of things. However, now we've also introduced the ability to have project dependencies. So based off of what the dependencies you've already defined within SuperGrid, you can bring those in and see how those dependencies look within the model itself. And then the last part of this is very similar to what we saw before, is you can go ahead and just select the projects you wish to include within your model. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this. And then I'm going to go to my demo model and open it up. So far it looks very similar to what we've seen before in the past. When you have your model, you have the top side of the screen that's showing your project Gantt bars, as well as the bottom side showing your aggregated resources, and then the individual resources if you do drill into them. So we have added some additional functionality on the top side to get a little bit more granular. So Tempus is very project centric, as well as we allow you to kind of get down to that task level. So users and administrators can define those tasks within the project and also assign the resources to set tasks. And so due to that, we've also decided to introduce the ability to view this information and move your information around at a task level. So now you'll see that there is kind of this expand collapse option over on each one of your projects. And once selected, it will show you all the tasks associated with the project, as well as the duration for those given tasks. And not only can you just move the project like you've seen before and move the projects, you can actually interact with each task individually. So you can see if I wanted just to compress a particular task within here, or if I wanted to move it around, I can act just on that particular task item without having to impact the entirety of the project. So a huge piece of functionality that many of our clients have asked for in the past, which you can now do within the model. Additionally, like we've seen with some of the projects before, you had the ability to clone. You can clone tasks as well and choose to include or exclude them. So you do have some additional configuration and just different scenarios you can work through at that particular task level. So huge add to the what if side of things to be able to get that granular. But we've also added an additional option on the project side, which helps you split apart the information associated with the project. So typically in the past, you've been able to handle scenarios where you're trying to move a project to a new duration, or if you need to essentially compress the timeline of the project 3 months less or expand it out. But one of the key features, which is a little bit more difficult to work with, was what if we needed to split a project? What if we had to do a complete halt within a given project, take maybe a couple month break, and then come back to it? One of the new options we did add within here is just the ability to split a project within the model. So let's say, for example, we needed to come to a halt a project, we have to completely stop it, but then we have to pick it up back 3 months later. You can do so by splitting the project here. And essentially it will say, what is the new project that you're going to be creating, or essentially where you, what is the second half of this project going to be called? And what if we just name it Aurora Phase 15-2, or to say PT2. And then you can choose where to split that given project based off the duration of the project. So maybe I needed to split it in May, and it would help if I actually select it. With there, we can go ahead and hit split, and then that should create another project within here. Okay, additionally, in the previous versions of Tempus, we had the strategic roll-up. So it would essentially allow you to, within your projects in the project grid up above, group together your projects by a particular attribute within Tempus. It would give you kind of that very high level, but would not allow you to get down to that more granular level of the specific projects associated to that. So we've kind of scrapped that whole idea in terms of just having it as a separate view, but just adding grouping like you've seen with many of the other views within Tempus. So this will allow you to group by your project selection attributes down below. And so what we can see here is right here, we have current phase. We can then group our projects by current phase, but now in previous versions, this would kind of be where you'd be at, where you can say, okay, this is my current phase. We're seeing the projects within here. But now we can actually expand that to see the individual projects associated to each one of these particular phases. So phase 1 has assets database design, Barracuda phase 9, and all the projects associated to those, as well as you still have the same options to exclude all those projects, as well as you can interact with them. So additionally, if you want to move all the projects out, so let's say all my projects in phase 1 need to move, just like in the previous strategic rollout option, you can select all those projects and move them to a new particular place in time. Okay. Additionally, we have the filtering options, similar, but just a new placement within here where you can filter based off project names down below. And so it's a little bit more intuitive where it's being displayed, as well as it's a little bit more easier to interact with than in the previous version. And then also right here, if you do have your dependencies enabled, you could show them within here, but right here would be where that option would be displayed. So if you did have show dependencies enabled within the model, and I'll just go ahead, even though I don't have dependencies configured, I can go ahead, I'll go back to my model configuration, enable that. And then now within here, we can choose if I want to show my dependencies or not, and I do have one actually where you can see it right here. So if you do need to show your dependencies, you have the toggleable option just with your milestones. So same functionality that we've seen, just maybe a little bit of different placement as well as a more modernized UI. And before I move on to the financial area that we can see up above, the one thing I did want to mention is the settings associated to your account. So previously there was a cog icon in the bottom right-hand corner that allowed you to kind of define your week start date, if you want to have a custom gradient and things along those lines. So that has been moved up into the top area. So if you go to our settings, select on your name and go to settings, just so you're aware, you still have those same options. It's just placed in a different area. So I can still choose if I want it to be on the week start, weekend, or my default unit. You can also choose your resource grid settings and what you want the default there, as well as you can define a custom gradient. So one thing with the custom gradient here is it's going to be more so aligned to how gradients are defined within the bulk project allocation Flatgrid and heat map areas within general settings. As well as we've kind of changed it. We have a wider range of colors, but the selection options are a little bit different. So you're not selecting on the gradient within the wheel or within a circle and defining it. It's more so aligned to what we have throughout the product itself. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to go back one more screen, and the last thing we will be covering on the what if side of things before going through SuperGrid is the introduction of financials within the model. So up here in the top right, if you do have financials enabled, so if you have selected some financial categories, you will have this financials option up above. And when this is selected, two things are going to happen. One, on the bottom side of the screen, you're going to see your financial information. And then at the top side of the screen, you will also see green bars associated to each one of your projects that have financials associated to them. Since the financials in Tempus aren't defined by the start and end dates, they're actually independent. So your financials could have a different duration and time period than the actual project itself. We do split them up, where you can see right here, for example, Apollo phase 4, our financials start probably in the beginning of July and go out way into 2024 and into 2025, where the project itself ends at the end or the middle of 2024. So you do have some options there. You do have some options there to kind of display this information, but you can still interact with the grid just like you would have in the Gantt bar. So if I go over here and move it like this, you will see some changes to that information, and you can still change how that essentially how that's working, as well as you can see if I do move my project, the financials will move with it. So down below, you can see that this is changing, and the financial information associated with the project is actually moving alongside with it. So one thing that you do need to do is you do need to move the entire project, so that you can't just move the financial bar itself. You will be moving the project itself with it. And so as you move it, you will then see the financials move as well. More importantly, you can also see down below the financial information associated to your projects. So we only have a couple projects that have financials, and you can see those at the top by the ones with the green bar, as well as we have this icon. But this is essentially taking any of the financial information associated to your projects and displaying it down below. So outside of that, you also have the ability to add in your budget. So this is going to be taking it one step further, where this is going to be taking the information associated to a budget that you would have defined within budget management and the SuperGrid side of things, where you could then say, I have this much budget for these associated types of projects. So my budget is currently based off the phase. So I have the budget defined for my given phases. I just haven't configured it on my side, and we'll go over here. But then you can also see any of the planned information, so any of the planned financial information associated to that given those given projects, and then you get a delta between those. So you could set your budget, and then you can start playing around with the financial information associated to those projects, so that you can then see how that would impact if you're over or under your budget that you defined, and kind of some of those scenarios around that. So a huge addition into the product to have some of these what if side of things, these enhancements, as well as we're going to continue to improve some of the functionality in here, as well as the user interface on the modeling side. So with that being said, that kind of concludes the what if side of things. So a lot of new pieces of functionality, just due to the amount of functionality we also have on the SuperGrid side of things. We weren't able to get into all the weeds within here, but absolutely looking forward to having everyone go in there and kind of play around and see the new functionality, any feedback that you have. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and close out of my SuperGrid side of things. My Tempus side of things, and we'll be navigating back to SuperGrid, where we'll be covering some of the new enhancements on the SuperGrid side of things. So the first area that we're going to start with is going to be in email management. So one of the new pieces of functionality we did introduce within 8.1 is going to be the ability to have email notifications within Tempus. So many of our clients do have some email notifications. They've worked with us internally to kind of get those set up. However, they weren't directly out of the box and not something that you can configure on your end. However, we are introducing some of those capabilities, at least within some of the major areas of Tempus where we see notifications are needed. So within 8.1, we will be starting with some of the timesheet actions and timesheet notifications associated to your users. So these are going to be allowed your users to receive notifications if they didn't submit their timesheet, or notifications where they need to be reminded to submit their timesheet if they've just approved them and they want to kind of see that it's been approved. We're going to be allowing some of those notifications on a scheduled basis to be sent to the users within Tempus. So we'll go through how to configure that, how to work with that, and then from the end user side, how they can go through and actually subscribe to those notifications and then choose the notifications that they want to see. So there will always be that separation where the user does need to opt in to the notifications, even if the administrators have set them up within their environment. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start off by going to admin settings here. And then over here, you will see this new tile called email management. However, before I do anything, I just want to acknowledge some of the settings within general settings associated emails, just so you can get them set up and don't forget about them, because this is very important, especially on the user side of things, to configure email notifications. So if we go to general settings here, and I believe it's within miscellaneous, you will see underneath the subscriptions area, a new option underneath allowed notification types. So in 8.0, we did add in-app and Teams notifications. However, you'll see a third option now called email. So that will need to be enabled for your users to subscribe to the email notifications. So additionally, we have one more option within general settings to help govern your email notifications, and that is a custom email service provider. So this is optional. If you don't, you'll be just going based off of our infrastructure. However, if you do need to use your own email provider, that's absolutely fine. You can go ahead and define that by just enabling that, and then you'll have a couple options and configurations that you need to set up on your side. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to use the one built into Tempus. I'm going to go ahead and go back. And now we can start kind of setting up the emails within email management. So this is going to be the approach from the administrative side. So this is going to be setting up the email notifications, And then later on, we'll go through how the user can actually subscribe to them. But when you navigate to email management, you'll see a screen similar to this, where you have your event names, your schedule, as well as if it's active or not. So you are not going to be required by any means to schedule all of these. You can pick and choose the email notifications that you want to set up within your system. And then we have kind of them broken out into two different areas. So we have our timesheet users. So these are going to be email notifications being sent out to the timesheet user. And then we have our timesheet approver. And those are going to be email notifications that are going to be sent out to the timesheet approvers within Tempus. And then those are just broken up into different events. So if the timesheet user's timesheet becomes approved, essentially we have it scheduled to send them an email notification. If the timesheet user's timesheet becomes rejected, then we'll send out an email notification to the user. And very similar on the timesheet approver side, let's say the timesheet approver, one of the users retracts one of their timesheets, then they can go ahead and display that. So pretty straightforward on the different event types that we have. We also have not submitted, which are a little bit different. We'll cover those in just a bit, but we'll stick with the approved, rejected, timesheet approver submitted, and then timesheet approver retracted as well. So let's say you wanted to set one of these up. Let's say I wanted to email my timesheet users whenever one of their timesheets becomes approved. So if we click into there, we'll then be navigated to a screen where we can kind of define what that email notification will look like. So each one of these different events and email notifications do have out-of-the-box default templates, and that's what you're seeing right now, where we have this broken up into kind of several parts. You have the subject of the email, and then we have the body, and then the body's also kind of broken up into three different sections. First is the, let's say this is the kind of top area, so the body, where you have some static text where you can display or just provide some detail about the email to the user. Next, we have this repeating block down below. So this is going to allow you to account for multiple actions, because let's say this user's timesheet becomes approved more than once. So let's just say it goes through a period where it says the user approved their timesheet, then it got retracted, and then it got approved again. Just to account for all of those different events, it would show multiple blocks. And so that's where we have this kind of repeating section within here, where it's saying, okay, this is going to be a repeating block. We would see this has been approved on this date, and then it would happen again if there was multiple approvals before the email notification was sent. So it's not as applicable, I would say, on the side for the timesheet user, but you'll see the importance really comes through when on the approver side, when there could be multiple users that they're worried about, and they have to have multiple kind of events being tracked simultaneously. And then lastly, down below, you have like kind of another body where it's not going to be within that repeating block. So that'll be useful for like your signature or just a thank you or anything along those lines. Additionally, you have options to kind of change the format. So if you want to add different font sizes, bold particular areas, put different shading, you can do anything along those lines. As well as within each one of those these areas, you will have some references up above to reference information. So references are just going to be associating it to that particular user or period or that kind of event. So it's going to be more dynamic in nature, where it says, okay, resource name. This is going to be the resource name associated with the timesheet. So you can say, hi, resource name. And so you can actually address the person in this case. So we can say, maybe for example, we wanted to say hello, and then we want to put our resource name. Right here, we can see in our preview, it says, hello, Jim Davis, as if Jim is the user in this case. And so we do have our preview over here on the right, kind of showing us what this is going to look like when it does get sent out, or potentially what it could look like. Additionally, you'll have more references within the event-driven description or this repeating block. So let's say we wanted to add let's just say we want to say period start. And we go ahead and we add that. And we want to see our period end. We can go ahead and add our period end. And so you're just adding additional information that we think may be important to the user at that point in time based off the timesheet. They need to see their timesheet approver or the username, period name, just additional information that you can provide within here to help associate that to the user. So once you have that set up and you want to save this, we can go ahead and hit save. And that's just going to save it. We still need to schedule that, and we'll do that here in a bit. But this will just save how this looks. And so next time when I come in here, we can expect that's what it looks like. We go to our approved, we see that same kind of format. And then once it's scheduled, it's going to be delivered to your users as long as they're subscribed. If at any point you want to revert back to the default template that we provide, you absolutely can. All you have to do is hit this reset button. It's going to give you a confirmation message, and we can just go ahead and hit reset. And there we go. Now it's back to the default template that we were working with previously. So once you've gone ahead and you configured how the email notifications should look, the next step will be to schedule these email notifications. So over here on the right, we can go over here and see define schedule. And if we click on that, it's just going to give us options to schedule these particular days of the week and the particular time that we want these email notifications to be sent. So at this time, email notifications only can be sent out once a day, as well as it can, each one of the events that we've described are going to be scheduled occurrences. So you will have to specify on this given day, you want to run at that time, and it's just going to be tracking at those tracking the events during or between the different time periods from the different email notifications that have been sent, and then sending those to the users at the time you specify. So we do plan on adding some additional email notification functionality, but we're going to be starting out with this schedule-driven approach. So within here, let's say I wanted to send this on Thursday and Friday. We can go ahead and select those options, and then we have to specify a given time. So this is always going to be defined within GMT. However, you will see your time down below. So for me, I'm in Eastern, so it's saying 10:59. If I wanted to change this within here and I wanted to be 1500, let's say I wanted to send it here. This is going to send it at 11. And let's say I want this to send at 20. That's essentially going to be sending at 1600, so 4 o'clock. So we can go ahead, specify that schedule, and hit save. And now we have that active email notification. So based off of this, we're going to be now starting to track some of those events. Once I hit save, there we go. We can see this is scheduled now to run on Thursday and Friday at 20 GMT time. So you can change this at any point in time. You can deactivate it once it has been activated if you'd like. And you can set up a very similar structure for a majority of these email notifications. You will see that my timesheet user submitted is a little bit different, and that's because the process is a little bit different than ones such as an approved or rejected status. So not submitted is going to be more so run at a given point in time based off of an option configured within timesheet management. It's essentially going to look at a particular amount of days after the period would have ended. So let's say in this case, it says notification will be sent 4 days after the period ends. So essentially it says after 4 days, after the period ends, we are going to be sending an email notification to that user, notifying them that they have not submitted their email or their timesheet, and they need to go ahead and fill it out. So it's configured a little bit differently. You can still schedule the time. It's just you're not going to be able to schedule the date, the days for which this will run within this screen. To do that, you will have to navigate over to timesheet settings, and you will see this reminder days and notification. And so this was introduced previously for the in-app notifications for Teams as well as in-app. And so this is essentially going to allow you to say maybe 2 days after the period, I save that. Now when I go back to the screen, we'll see that my email notifications for the not submitted tasks are going to be sent 2 days after the period ends. So it's going to be tied directly to that option within timesheet configuration, and it's just determining how many days after or before, depending on how you want to do this, that these email notifications should be sent out to the user. Okay, so with that being said, that's how you would configure that from an administrative perspective. But it's very important that your users also subscribe to ensure that they're gonna actually receive these email notifications. And if they want, they can always opt out. They have full capability of defining how and what notifications they will receive. And to do that, they'll be managed within the subscription settings. So if we head up to our profile, so my name right up here, and I go to my subscriptions, as long as we have email notifications enabled within the environment, you will see this kind of email notifications option in the top right. So there'll be 2 steps that you'll need to follow to ensure that you're receiving your email notifications. First, you'll have to verify your email. So over here on the left, you will see a verify email option. This is essentially going to be referencing the email associated to your account. So if I hover over this, you can see I have mbaker123123 as my email address associated to my administrator account. So if I wanted to verify this account and make sure that emails can be sent to me in this case, I will have to verify. And all that does is once I select it, it's going to send an email to that given email address, and you'll just have to verify it on that side. So I actually have it pulled up over here. And so we'll just give it a second here. And there we go. We have my Tempus email verification. It's just going to let me know, hello, myself. To ensure you receive all the important notifications from Tempus Resource, you need to verify your email address. And all you have to do is click on this button. Once you do so, it's going to bring you back to Tempus. And now if I go back to my subscriptions page and go to email notifications, you will see that my email has now been verified. So this is just going to be the first step to allowing your account to receive email notifications. And then next, you'll just have to determine what email notifications you want to see. So outside of them being configured, so they do have to be configured administratively. However, the user can opt in to receive any of the email notifications within here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to receive all the ones associated to my timesheet. Now, if you do have timesheet notifications for approved, rejected, or not submitted configured administratively, your user will now, or this user will now receive that information. They can unsubscribe at any point in time. If we go ahead and select on this, they'll unsubscribe from all selected, as well as you have the same options down below for the timesheet management side. So this is only going to display if you're a timesheet approver within Tempus. So if your user is a normal timesheet user, they will not have this option displayed to alleviate any confusion within here. So that kind of sums up the email notification options that we have added. Great piece of functionality and something that we look to build upon in the future as well, with more different event types and additional just customization when it comes to the email notifications themselves. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and navigate back home. And the next main area that we're going to be focusing on is the bulk project allocation Flatgrid. And so if we navigate here, we will see some additional pieces of functionality added as well. So to start things out, I did want to start with one of the new views that we've added in here called Gantt. And to do so, I'm going to have to select a different project. So let me go to project mode and let me go ahead and add in Stratos Project 11. Go ahead and add it here. And the reason I added this in here is because it doesn't completely encapsulate the entire duration that I have defined. So you can see if I'm in the hourly mode, I have hours defined over here. So we can see I have it from January 2023 to June 2023, where all the rest of my projects have it through the entire duration. However, we have introduced this Gantt bar option, which is going to display this your information more as a bar. You can still see your hourly information as you can see here, but now you can choose to shift the assignments that you're working with as a whole when within this view. So if I had these views up above, since I have no kind of room to work with, I can't move them. But let's say I wanted to shift out Eric a couple months. So let's say I want his assignment to be starting in the beginning of April instead of the beginning of January. I can just go ahead and move this out. And there we go. It'll jump to April. And now you can see all the hours that I have associated are now being within April. So just a very easy way for users to be able to shift tasks without having to copy and paste it over and do any of the kind of ways to start shifting this information. You can just drag and drop into the place you want it to be. And then if we go to hours, you can see that those hours have been completely moved to the area that we selected. So very nice way to start working a more different approach to work with the assignment information within here. Instead of entering them directly in the cells, you can kind of drag and drop them into place as long as the essentially the allocation is not being augmented. You can always go between the different views as well. So let's say you did need to add additional allocation. By no means are you going to be prohibited to do so. You can still work with it in those different views as you normally would within bulk project allocation. It's just this new Gantt bar is just giving you additional flexibility to start manipulating or working with the information associated to the assignments. Awesome. Next piece of functionality I wanted to mention is some of the dynamic filterings. So just some additional options. Someone is going to release this and release those changes. But we have added 2 options up here, the +3 months and +6 months. And all this is going to do is it's going to say, I'm going to go based off of the day and then the next 3 months. Or if I go off of here, I want to see based off of the day and then the next 6 months. So it's just allowing you to kind of prioritize a view of a particular amount of information instead of saying I want to do the next quarter and then or the year to date, which are some of the different dynamic options, but this is going to be more so associated to the given date and then out X amount of time. Additionally, we've added some new options within here. So I'm going to navigate back to the hours, and then underneath options, you will see there are a couple new options, but the one thing I did want to mention in here is just these helper options. So we've just added some contextual help icons just to give a little bit more insight on what some of these options are doing. Sometimes it wasn't as intuitive as we would have hoped to what this was doing. So to kind of help alleviate some of that confusion, we added these help icons just to give a brief summary of what these options would be doing. Additionally, we've added a new heat map. So previously we had a resource request, but now we've also added a non-zero. And what this is going to do is it's just going to highlight any piece of allocation or any assignment that has allocation during that given time. And then if there is 0 information being displayed, like in the bottom right-hand corner, it's not going to provide a heat map there. So just a very great way to help isolate where resources are not being allocated, and if some adjustments need to be made to make sure that allocation is being allocated during those given points of time. Okay, so back to the options. We have added some additional information when it comes to these options. So these are basically, for the most part, the same. But if we do add some groupings, we will have some additional options being displayed. So if we go to our group by right here, and let's say I wanted to group by department, which is one of my selection attributes within Tempus, I have that here. And now if I go back to my options, we will see options for show net availability and show allocation percentage. So as long as you're grouping by a resource attribute, you will have the ability to show the net availability of that particular aggregate that you may have selected, as well as the allocation percentage. So if I drill into, let's say, production, for example, we can see what my net availability of all my production information would be, as well as we can see my allocation percentage as well. So very useful, especially if you do want to get down to that particular aggregate level, but you aren't restricted just there. You can add multiple levels within here if you'd like. And so if we do want to go ahead and, let's say, for example, we wanted to just group it by a resource, which is very common, we can actually select our resource name as well as an additional level of grouping, and we can go down to see the information at that resource level. So we can see this resource is currently allocated 60%. The net availability is showing around 70 hours of availability left for the resource. And so then you can get down to that and make adjustments to the allocation appropriately. So just additional information that you can display within the single view without having to jump around to each different screen to see what some of those values would look like. So something we've had a lot of customers look for, and something that we are really glad to provide and give them that just additional visibility without having to jump between the product. Additionally, we have added one more option within here called week display format. And so what we now allow you to do is if you are in this week mode, you have different format options just to give a little bit more customization. So you can see right now it's the start date of the week. Some people may prioritize the end date and they want to see the information that way, or a week number, which is going to be essentially the week of a number associated to the week on the given year. So we have week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., going all the way out to week 52 towards the end of the year. Outside of that, we've also added this icon right here to help provide a legend. So this is going to help you associate some of the heat maps and different essentially icons or that are being displayed here. So since some of these are customizable, just having some of that additional information and what these mean and just through a single click will help alleviate some of the back and forth that you may experience with some of your end users. So this legend is just going to display what milestones and what the icons look like, the non-zero background if you're using the non-zero heat map view, your resource heat map based off of the different kind of ranges you've configured within general settings, as well as your resource request heat map if you're utilizing the heat map within here. So just more capability and more ways to give that information to your end users and alleviate some of that back and forth that may happen. And then next, we have some additional options on the insert column side of things. So one of the big pieces of functionality added within here is the ability to add skills. So we've had skills within Tempus for a couple of years now, and we've now just introduced them into the BPA Flatgrid. So they've been in some of the resource capacity views as well. We have reporting based off of that, but now we've also introduced it here. So if you do want to see some of that skill information, you can pull them in. And so we're going to have this individual skills defined. And if you want to pull them in, you can go ahead and do so and see what that information is. So on my side, I don't have many of them defined. That one's on me, but you will be able to add them in here, as well as you do have the capability to also group by those skills if needed. Moving back to the insert columns view, one of the changes that we've made that is within here is the assignment total. So previously assignment total was found within the options and you would configure and enable it within here. However, now it's just, since it's being represented basically as a column, we've decided to bring it back in here and display it within here as well. So we have our assignment total. And so it's just moved, functionality is still there and you still will be able to persist it. When you come back to this view, we've just moved it to this insert columns since it's technically being represented as a column anyways. And then lastly, within the insert columns area, we have added this pin option. So we can essentially, for any of the columns that you've added into the view, you can choose to pin this option, which is going to essentially freeze any of the columns above that pin. So this red line is going to mark any of the columns that will be frozen. We also freeze resource name, project name, and task name, so that will be done by our default. But you can see now I have these three, or in this case, these options over here being pinned. And now if I move over to the left, you can see that Python and assignment total are not pinned, so they're being essentially hidden from the view as I use my scroll bar, where everything to the left is not. And then lastly, one thing I want to mention on here is just a quality of life change when it comes to views. And so I'm going to create a couple views here. So previously the positioning of reviews were kind of static. So if you wanted to put a view that's more important, let's say a year down the line, you create a view and it's your best view and you want to use it most of the time. However, it would be always towards the bottom of the list. We've just given the ability to reorder your views, and you'll see this kind of throughout many of the different areas within Tempus where we have views. So just something I wanted to mention within here so you can control kind of the placement within there. Okay. And then lastly, on the BPA Flatgrid side, this is more so on the dynamic side or the view management side of things. We have added a dynamic date range for your public views. And I won't go too in depth into what this is, but what you'll see now is if you set up a public view, you will have this option to have a dynamic date. And it's essentially going to say, I want to have, it's going to start on the given date, and then you can define how you want the end date to be. So you can say, I want it to be extended out to a custom date. I want it to at the end of next quarter. And so that will automatically update when it goes to the next quarter, the end of the current year, the end of the next year, and just gives you some ability to, so you don't have to continuously manage the date range for that given view. It's just going to be automatically populated based off of what you set here. Just want to reiterate, this is only available on the public view side of things. And so in this case, I have this, I can go here. If I go back to BPA Flatgrid once more and open up my 8.1 public view, you can see I don't have any projects selected, but essentially my date range is going to be automatically updated, and I would expect to see it tomorrow, start on the September 7th, 2023. Okay. So with that being said, that covers some of the major areas where we have a lot of enhancements. Next, we're going to be covering some a lot of different areas as well that still have some enhancements, very important pieces of functionality, just not as, it's going to be a little bit more rapid fire. So I do apologize for some of the speed here, but I want to make sure that we can cover all the new pieces of functionality. And so the next area to start with is going to be on the project management side of things. And so I'm going to open up a project called Stratos Project 11. And I'm going to start off on the single project allocation screen. And so within here, we have added some additional options and filtering capabilities within here. First thing I want to start off with is this add assignments. So we've had an increasing need for users to be able to assign multiple users to a task within the single project allocation screen. So that's what we've added with this bulk assignment. So over here on the left, we have the resource that can be assigned to this project, and then on the right, the tasks associated to the project. And let's say I wanted to select Brandon, Charles, Colin, and Donna, and I need to add them to phase 2. I can absolutely do so. I can always filter based off of this. So let's say I wanted to filter on my department, and I want to say I need to see which of my users are human accounting resource or human resource management. Go ahead and move that. In my case, I don't have any, so I'll go ahead and remove that filter, but you can filter off those resources as long as they are part of that particular group, and we can just add them. And it's just going to add these 4 resources onto the project. And then if I go to my task view, you can see that they've all been added to the phase 2, which I selected. So it's a very easy way to add multiple resources on the project simultaneously instead of having to go and find the resource each time and add them to that task. Additionally, we've added some filtering options. So to help isolate the information that you're looking at when within single project allocation. So underneath options, we now see a date range filter, which will allow you just to select the range of information that you may want to see. So let's say I wanted to focus on the September 2023 information. I can change this filter to do so. And at any point in time, I can always remove it as well to get the full range of the information on this given project. One last thing I did want to mention is you do have this option if you want to select the next year or current year or year to date. So you have some of those more kind of defined filter options or quick filter options. Additionally, we've updated this search. So before in the by task view, if you're grouping by task, you wouldn't be able to search based off task resources within here, but now you can search based off a resource or task name. Additionally, we've added some of the heat maps to the task view as well. So if you are grouping by task within here, before you wouldn't be able to see heat maps. Now we can define them if we choose. So we can go here and we can expand this and we can see the heat map information at that task level. On the same project side of things, we have added one additional update to Build Team, a very useful piece of functionality, and that's the ability to automatically assign users to the Build Team based off an attribute within Tempus. So you'll see this options area now within Build Team, where you can then see the auto add to team option, which will allow you to select a particular resource or resource attribute. Let's say I want a department, and then I want to say maybe all marketing resources should be on this project. I can go ahead and auto add the team. When you initially set it up, it's going to say you're going to be adding the following resources because they're all belonging to that marketing department. And I can go ahead and hit save, close, and then save. So with that in place, now whenever any resource is added to the marketing department, it's automatically going to be added onto the team for this project. So very useful to help govern which users should be on particular teams, as well as on the timesheet side with the self-service assignment options. It's just going to be very useful for that as well. Okay, moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and go back to project management. A couple things, very small updates. One is just the same view option that you can reorder your views. So you'll see that on the project management as the resource management side. Some additional options when it comes to cloning, and more of that just is this open on clone. So if you want to just automatically open to the clone project after you clone it, you have an option to do so. You'll see a very similar thing when you're creating a project from a template as well. And then lastly, if we navigate into a project, you will see that the ordering of these options have slightly changed. So previously, we had a more defined option within here. However, now it's going to be based off of alphabetical order. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go back to general settings and just some more pieces of functionality that we would like to cover. One is going to be some global language setting options. So in the past, Tempus has been strictly kind of in English language. However, we have added some language options within here as well. So within general settings in the global, you can change the language of your environment. So we have English, French, German, and just some different language options you can set. So language options aren't going to be entirely associated to the environment. You can define this at a personal level as well. So let's say, for example, I'm setting something up here. Let's say I wanted to change this to German. I can go ahead and hit save. What this is doing is it's just setting that as the default for my environment. So my default language is German. We are now seeing this within German as well. Some of the labels that are restricted to the environment will not change, but we change as much as we can based off of ones that don't have aliases. However, knowing that we have clients that utilize Tempus in different areas of the world and need to have different language controls based off of where they're located, you can additionally manage the language setting within your profile. So even though mine is set to German as the default for the environment, I can always change this back to English for my environment only. And so I'm seeing it within English. However, all my other users are seeing it in German. And each one of the other users also have the ability to control that if needed. So very big add, very nice addition to have that multi-language support within Tempus. Additionally, we've added some additional options to make it a little bit more straightforward on the login page. So previously, we had some end users potentially get confused when navigating here based off the language that we've displayed. So we decided to kind of put that up and give all that control to the administrator themselves. So the first thing I want to introduce is just you can rename the labels for any of the single sign-on options that you've configured. So let's say in this case, we have Microsoft single sign-on. Typically is to continue with Microsoft, but wanted to be more straightforward and name it Microsoft SSO. We've gone ahead and done that, so you can change the labels and how that is displayed. And then additionally, you can choose primary and secondary options for logging in. So let's say, for example, I want my users to most likely and typically sign in with single sign-on, but then there's a couple of users that need to log in with custom credentials. In this case, we've marked Microsoft as a primary SSO option, and then we have password not. So now if I were to log out of my system, when I navigate to my home page, you can see log into your account. All we're identifying and showing is my Microsoft SSO. But if I need to use my secondary options, you can by going on to use other options. So I'll log back in here. And we're back into the system. So it just allows you to kind of prioritize particular login options while unprioritizing some of the other ones. Okay, a couple more features I just want to highlight very quickly. First is we have introduced rich text attributes within Tempus. So your string fields, let's go ahead and have string. Now any of your string fields have the ability to be rich text. And so essentially this is going to be text fields that have some additional formatting associated to them. So you can go ahead and add different colors, fonts, you can have italicized, bold, anything that you would like within here, and add those to your rich text fields. So those will be present within any of the attribute types within Tempus, as well as available within many of the different views. Okay, and then lastly, I just want to mention a couple things when it comes to some of the error messages and just the look and feel. So we've made a lot of updates to Tempus to be associated to the WCAG compliance. So you'll see there have been a lot more updates to error messages, validation messages, confirmation messages as well. Those are just giving it a different look and feel to be more compliant with some of those with WCAG. And you can see, for example, if I go in here and I open up project management, and let's say I force a validation message, and by changing the start date above, you can just see it looks a little bit different. So the messages are still there. It's just the way that they look is a little bit different than they were before and more standardized throughout the entire product. So you'll see that with the error messages, some of the confirmation messages, tag colors and shapes, as well as the grids are going to be overall just more similar to one another, just as well as they're going to be basically, there shouldn't be as much inconsistency between those views. Additionally, we've added some options when it comes to the error messages themselves. So we do have a error message that is displayed that essentially says, we're looking into this issue. If you continue to see this, please reach out to support at ProSymmetry. That is still the standard process that we follow. However, we have added an alias for that. So if you want to have some additional generic text information associated to that instead of the ones that we provide, you can absolutely define that within this alias tab. Okay, and then the one last feature, which is a feature that is very useful, a huge quality of life feature that we have, is when it comes to roadmap management, you do now have the ability to clone a roadmap. So you will have a clone option in here. So if you do wish to clone your roadmaps, you can do so now instead of having to recreate them from scratch. So I do apologize towards the end, going a little bit fast, but I wanted to make sure that we were covering as much of the functionality that we have. Some of the pieces that were not covered directly today is some of the messaging when it comes to deleting global roles in resource security groups. We're just giving you options to then essentially show where some of those dependencies lie if they need to be deleted. And then also we have some enhancements on the impersonation management side. So the look and feel has been changed, a lot more compliance when it comes to bulk editing of this information, and a very cool piece of functionality that allows you to set up impersonations based off a hierarchy. So if you say, let's say myself is the timesheet manager or timesheet approver of Hannah, and then Hannah is the timesheet approver of Sam, if I impersonate Hannah or get access to impersonate Hannah, then I could have it cascade down into all the resource managers that would follow Hannah as well. So just some additional options that we didn't have time to cover today, but still wanted to give them a mention within here. But with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Samantha Varner to kind of wrap up today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for spending the time diving through all of those features. So like I said before, if you have any questions, or I should say, like Matt said before, if you did ask any questions and they were not answered during this session, we will go ahead and respond to you directly. Your customer success manager will, or your implementation specialist, depending. So we will get those answered. Like I said, if you are ready to get your dev environment or your lower environments upgraded, reach out to your customer success manager or implementation specialist. We will also be sending an email out to everyone with premium support probably this afternoon, letting them know they can get scheduled as well, and we will get those booked. But thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. We're really excited for 8.1, and we hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Bye-bye.